My name is Michael Butler, and owner of Village Apothecary Incorporated, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
This special Pharmacy Podcast series is sponsored by First Financial Bank, leaders in financial expertise, lending, and independent pharmacy business expansion. And now, here's the founder and CEO of Pharmacy Podcast Network and series host, Todd Eury.
Hey, Pharmacy Podcast listeners. This is the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm the founder, CEO of the network, which is just exploding. We're over 25 separate channels and shows now with 34 pharmacist co-hosts, which is so exciting. We have a returning series that has been built out that has been very meaningful to me as well as our listeners. First Financial Bank has sponsored an entire series on real information from the perspective of the pharmacy owner about financing and the importance of choices that you're making. Why are you financing in the first place? It might sound like a simple statement and question, but I'm going to reference back to podcast 1 and 2. That will be in the show notes. But today we're welcoming another pharmacy operator owner, someone who understands it from multiple pharmacy perspective, Mr. Michael Butler. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Hello.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your businesses. I know that in talking with you before, you have 5 different pharmacies. So lay some groundwork for our listeners today.
Okay. I got out of pharmacy school and went to work for my father. He owned 2 pharmacies. And I worked for him for probably about 10 years before I decided that I really wanted to step into the ownership role. And we worked out a deal for me to purchase the stores from him. He owner financed those stores, and that was a great scenario for me to get my feet wet and in the door. 2 years later, I had an opportunity of another store to acquire, and utilizing Owen Bondurant at Independent RX Consultants, he set up a relationship with First Financial Bank, and we were able to use an SBA loan to acquire the remaining debt from my father. And subsequently using that approach, we were able to take the equity that I had gained in Village Apothecary Incorporated and purchase this other existing pharmacy. So it was a really great situation for me to attempt my first branch out of gaining more stores through a SBA loan through First Financial Bank.
Michael, being SBA, was it any more complex in comparison to some of the other financial transactions that you've made throughout your businesses and your 5 pharmacies?
I think there's definitely a lot more hoops to jump through personally on an SBA loan, but a loan of this size that we're doing for pharmacies where you've got very little hard assets for the bank to feel secure. It's really something that it's hard to find a loan for a pharmacy without using an SBA arm of a loan. So there may be a little bit more to deal with on getting the loan approved, but I feel that it's one of those that it's a secure thing and it's a guaranteed loan once you go through the process.
So there's lots of opportunities to engage with financial institutions, lenders. I'm sure you get junk mail just like I do. Why in the world did you choose First Financial Bank? We've heard from other customer sources with other ideas, and matter of fact, I've had other owners kind of discuss the concept of financing, but I want to hear your personal story, why you chose First Financial.
Well, getting into buying stores, I'd always heard that there were 2 players or one major player in the market. When I started to get into purchasing, First Financial was really getting very aggressive with their pharmacy. They had acquisition department or lending department. So they had spent some decent resources, hired a few people in that department really bolstered it. And I had known a couple of the people in that department, actually. And then when Owen recommended the bank, I felt that it was probably a pretty good and sure deal. Went through it with Bo. It was a pretty easy process. Another good selling point for me was actually it's an Arkansas-based pharmacy or Arkansas-based bank. So that made me feel a little bit more secure that the person I'm talking to was actually just down the road from me. So I like to, I pretty much always talk about, shopping local, doing local, being local, spending local. And when I could actually deal with a bank that was what I would consider local on the scale of banks, it made it a better deal for me.
What are your plans in expansion, and what type of obstacles are in your way in order to reach those goals? And the reason why I'm asking this question is this is going to fold back to the need to have a financial partner beyond just the purchase of the pharmacy, but actually operating capital. So I just definitely want to hear from your perspective about that.
Right. Okay. So, currently I own 5 pharmacies. I have used SBA to acquire 4 of them. I hit my SBA max on the 4th acquisition. So my goal is to continue to buy pharmacies. Obviously my obstacle, which you alluded to, is finding a financial partner that will work with you. We've been actively looking for those since I hit my SBA max. And currently we've got a couple of options that we are utilizing, but none of them are great options. The SBA loan is good because you can buy a pharmacy, you can come up with your percentage of the loan down, but then also they build into that loan working capital. So I can tell you that the last pharmacy that I acquired it with 0 working capital, and it was just some deals that I worked out with my wholesaler to allow me to push a lot of my current debt or my prescription drug costs on what would be my McKesson bill. I could push that off into the future, which gave me the leeway in order to handle that 30 to 45 day window of very little money coming in, but tremendous amount of money going out. And so, finding an institution that can work with you, that gives you not just a loan, but then also a working capital to enable you to, unforeseen things, not just the payroll on the first 2 payrolls, which you have very little income coming in to support that, but your McKesson bill or your wholesaler bill or your light bill or your, having to set up new accounts with phone and power and all of that, all of those things cost money. So whenever you're doing your financing, you're coming up with your 20% of your whole loan of the pharmacy. A lot of times, you don't have that much more set aside in order to be able to run and operate the business for that first 2 months or even 3 months when the cash flow is pretty tight.
And that cash flow is it is so obscure because it changes. Sometimes it's a 30-day rotation. Sometimes it's a 45-day. Sometimes it's a 90-day based on how you're reimbursed from some of these insurance companies, which is pretty frustrating. And then the aspect of a DIR fee with some of the clawbacks that are taking place, having that financial institution kind of backing you gives you a sigh of relief. But there's another point to this, Michael, that I kind of want you to elaborate on as an owner operator, and that is an institution who understands the business of pharmacy. To me, that seems like it's the deciding factor versus another organization who really has no idea what a pharmacy operator is going through.
Exactly. I can say that there are 2 people on staff with First Financial that they have made the commitment to financing pharmacies. Two members of the staff are actually, one is an ex-pharmacy owner, and one is an ex-employee of a major wholesaler. So, they definitely, First Financial's made that commitment moving forward to understand and appreciate what the independent segment is going through, what they need, and how they can better serve them in their lending department.
Hey, Michael, let's take a short break and listen to our sponsor, First Financial Bank.
Your community pharmacy business is more important than you realize. Your employees rely on you. Your patients and customers rely on you. Your community relies on your pharmacy to provide healthcare services they trust because your reputation in the community has stood the test of time. In making a decision, it is important to consider not only your business's current needs, but its potential future aspirations. That's especially true as you consider how you plan to invest in your business over the next few years. Before you start shopping around for a financial partner, consider why you need one in the first place. Are you looking for specialized services such as investment help or a small business loan? Do you understand the amount of monthly cash flow you need? Has your pharmacy business even started yet? Choosing a lender who understands the business of pharmacy is crucial to selecting a true partner for your capital and financial needs. Contact First Financial Bank today and discover a totally different kind of bank who's ready to work with you to help your pharmacy thrive. First Financial's lending team is made up of pharmacists, pharmacy owners, and has a combined 75 years of experience in pharmacy. First Financial Bank. We understand the business of pharmacy. Find out more at ffb1.com.
You've referenced these individuals, Bob Grohl, Larry Alexander. Bob's a former owner. He understands the business from a 360 perspective. Larry worked in wholesale for quite so many years and had hundreds, if not thousands, of pharmacies that he really was involved in. So does that come into it? Are these individuals also helping to advise that next purchase and the next move that you make from a financial perspective?
For me, no, but I've kind of stepped beyond the ability of what First Financial can do for me. But I feel that if you own one store and you're going for a second or going for a third or going for a fourth, and you're still underneath that SBA cap, they're a great resource to be able to come in and advise you and help you on understanding the complications of what you're going to run into as you grow your business and develop your corporation.
What about business development? How have you used any of this capital, any of this funding to actually expand your businesses?
Well, I actually on the third acquisition, or the third pharmacy acquisition that I acquired, which was the one that was the last one I did under SBA, I actually had an opportunity to acquire a pharmacy up the street from me. They were about 400 yards up the road. They were a grocery store chain. They were not meeting the numbers they needed. They were doing about 100 scripts, 110 scripts a day. They were going to revamp their entire grocery store and do a facelift, and they contacted me about if I would be interested in purchasing their script volume. So, it was kind of an unforeseen windfall. So I contacted SBA over at or the SBA department at First Financial. Got Bo on the phone, said, "Hey, is this something y'all can do?" And within a short period of time, had approval and worked the deal, closed it in less than 30 days, and we transferred all the prescriptions over to our pharmacy. It was a small acquisition; it didn't have a lot, but it brought in a good bump of patients to our pharmacy that we didn't have to expand any employees. We didn't have to add any employees. We really just kind of consumed that with our existing workflow. And so it just really added extra cash flow to the bottom line without really requiring us to have a lot of extra resources.
I think there's a market perspective to this and differentiation than even 10 years ago, we're kind of in a growth market right now, which is time to grow businesses. If you're out there and you're listening and you have a couple pharmacies or one pharmacy and you're thinking of expansion, now is the time to do it. I mean, the markets are really good right now, and rates are down, and I think it's time to grow. What's your next stage of growth, Michael? Where do you go from here? I know you said that you want to continue to acquire stores. What about a different type of pharmacy settings, long-term care, senior care, specialty, compounding? Tell us other things that you're planning on doing.
Well, I currently have a compounding pharmacy. I currently have a full line of medical supplies, a full line medical supply business. But my next acquisition, we're looking at long-term care. It's still kind of an untapped resource in that it's excluded from DIR fees. And you get obviously you're going to have better compliance on star rating for patients that are institutionalized or in a setting that someone else is handling their prescription drugs. So long-term care is a definite interest to me. So that's on my very short-term radar. That is going to be something that we're going to try to acquire and then see if I can actually roll that across my entire platform of pharmacies to improve how we do stuff and processes with any of our long-term care contracts that we have at any of the existing pharmacies.
I've been really excited about First Financial Bank's commitment to independent community pharmacy. You're touching on something that I want to kind of press on, and that is other facets of the business of pharmacy for community pharmacies to expand on, and that is our senior care. If you're listening to the show and you're thinking of expansion, reach out to Larry or Bob or any of the team really under the pharmacy division and talk to them about that expansion, because there is opportunity to grow. You just have to kind of be aggressive in doing so. Michael, I really enjoyed talking with you today. Is there any other advice as a pharmacy operator of multi-pharmacies that you can give our listeners today?
Well, I would say that, we have a pretty trying time, DIR fees, low reimbursement, pressure from the PBMs. I would say that now is the time to step in and acquire pharmacies. Independent pharmacies will be here forever. I have let there be no misgivings that independent pharmacies cannot go away. There are certain segments of our population that will always trade at independent pharmacies. So I would say that right now is the time to, if you have interest and you're wanting to own a pharmacy, reach out and touch your First Financial Bank, SBA type lending department that would enable you to decide if you do have the resources in order to step up and buy the pharmacies, because when everybody's panicking and running is the time that you want to step in and buy these stores, because you're going to be able to step in, you're going to understand how to run a pharmacy, and it just you're probably going to add a lot of assets to the existing store. When we buy a store, we almost always find that we can really step in and improve and decrease our overall expenses for that store, because we can spread them across the entire chain, or we don't need a redundant system in that store that they're currently paying for that we already have in our corporate headquarters. So, I feel that now is a really prime opportune time to go in and acquire stores. And the SBA loan utilized through First Financial Bank is a very easy way to do that.
Michael, I really appreciate talking with you today. It's been nice and refreshing to hear from another perspective, another pharmacy owner and operator, Michael Butler with Village Apothecary Clinton, and we appreciate you being on the Pharmacy Podcast.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network's Pharmacy Business Series, sponsored by First Financial Bank. To gain an advantage in your pharmacy business's needs for growing, expanding, selling, or financial strategy, reach out to the First Financial Bank's pharmacy business team. Go to ffb1.com and contact Larry Alexander for more information, or Google FFB1 Pharmacy. That's FFB1 Pharmacy. We thank First Financial Bank for sponsoring this Pharmacy Podcast Network Pharmacy Business Series. Be sure to listen to other pharmacy podcasts on the network and stay tuned for other First Financial Bank podcasts coming soon.